So, I've been in Morocco now for almost a month, and it really is no good because it's just it's terrible, basically. Like it's full of idiots, really. So I went to Morocco, like I've said. I went to Morocco because I'm looking for a partner, for a person, a female human woman who would basically be clickbait for me, but of course, like much more than that as well, who'd actually just be a partner in my whole endeavor. And basically, well, the thing is, I don't want somebody who's just clickbait, right? I want somebody who's actually like smart and like with it. And basically, I think anybody like that would have left Morocco long ago, if she's my age, which is what I want. So basically, this is not good. So why am I saying this? Well, mostly because they're Muslims, and Islam is terrible, right? I mean, it believes in eternal torture of people who don't respect Islam, who don't do what you're supposed to do, or whatever. So, I mean, that's really like that's horrible. That's the most horrible thing imaginable, in fact. So that people actually believe in this is terrible, and almost everyone does. I mean, like the streets are empty when right now it's Ramadan month, so I can really see that everybody follows it, right? Like there's nobody not doing this. There's nobody not doing this fasting thing. Everybody's fasting, and then everybody's like away eating with all the others when the fast is over. Um, it's just ridiculous. I mean, like the reason, they're doing it because of Islam, which is just a completely ridiculous thing, and everybody here, they're all just into this. They're all indoctrinated into this ridiculous and horrible superstition. And of course they're like at the same time they're aggressive. So this is really the trait of orcs, of what I'd call like beings that should be men but that are instead or beasts, right? That they follow irrational rules and they don't follow rational rules. So they'll be very aggressive towards one another. I see this especially like in the streets where they get very impatient and they drive too fast and like often very dangerously. And in fact, well, what happened, and of course this is the Gorth that arranged it, is that I was actually just I rented a car for a few days, and I was driving through some basically like shanty villages where you just got these little like shack things that are just constructed alongside the main road. And this is actually like the town where people live. And so as a result, you have to drive really slowly, even though this is like the main highway. Um, and so I picked up some kids because they were like going back to their village next to, nearby, back from school or something. And so I had three kids in the back. Hey, analysis, please. Great to, well, not see you, but at least hear, well, see you right here. Thank you. Um, and so anyway, I picked up these three kids and these three boys, and and was just pulling over to drop them off at their place. And at that moment, I saw in my rear view mirror, and I saw a car speeding, going very fast, much, much too fast, just extremely inappropriately fast, overtaking me. And basically, instead of arcing around me, it actually, I think, because it went on the gravel or something, and so it wasn't able to turn as it had intended, and so it just kept on going straight for a bit too long, and it just went straight into uh, a little girl. She was 10 years old and made a big bang. She went flying, and and she was dead. And that's it, you know. And then the other car just kept on going. It stopped a bit further ahead, and then didn't drive back and just drove on further. And so I pulled over. I just checked that the three boys in back didn't steal anything, so they went out, and yeah, there's just a giant flow pool of blood from her head, and so I just stayed a few minutes. I didn't know what to do. People started coming, but they didn't really seem to care all that much. It's more like, I'm the only one who seems to have been like upset. The others were just like, oh, something's happened. Something moderately eventful has happened. So So, yeah, and this is what happens when you just got idiots everywhere and they don't respect rational rules. Like rules of traffic, such as you don't go speeding wildly inappropriately in an area that has lots of pedestrians just on the roadside. So like, yeah, I'm leaving. It's just full of savages here, just full of savages. So I think anybody I'd want to be with, like, I don't want to spend more time here in this place. I don't want to spend more time anywhere in any Muslim place. And like, I don't want to be with anyone who does want to spend lots of time in Muslim places. And so why do like is there like I feel that there's somehow a link between Islam and this, even in a way, of course there in a way there isn't because there's lots of places that aren't Muslim that also have like traffic issues, but I feel that well it feels appropriate, right, for a Muslim place to also be cause fatal accidents, right? Because Islam fundamentally, what does it say? Precisely, it believes in worshiping this thing that will torture you eternally if you don't follow its stupid rules, right? So what it basically it breeds callousness towards the suffering of others. So naturally, if you've got that kind of callousness, you're also gonna be callous towards actual, not just imaginary things, but actual things that happen in real life. And so it feels, in a way, to me, it feels as if as if collectively, they killed that child, um, because yeah, because it feels appropriate for the religion, right? Hi, didn't you say in a stream you're a doctor? Could I ask you a question? Says, I run, uh, I run IRL silver in game. Okay, yeah, I get now the username. It says you were the first. You had to puke 10 times yesterday. Hi, are you somebody that I already know? I'm presuming so, because it says that you're, I mean, I've never seen this username and it says that this is your first message. I'm presuming this is someone I know, but that's just as a new username. Oh, I've got a phone. Well, this time I'm gonna decline. Um, okay, just because I don't want to interrupt my stream. So oh, so you saw me in a distant stream. Okay, yeah, I am a doctor, but I'm pretty crappy doctor. Um, so you want a diagnosis? Is that it? Do you want to know like you had to puke 10 times and you want to know what it is? I can't tell you. Presumably, I'm just gonna say like quote food poisoning, which is not actually poisoning so much as a short but quite virulent infection of the upper gastro or lower, well, not really like any gastrointestinal tract, but like typically more, like the stomach or something. No, not even necessarily, but basically an infection, what we call food poisoning, right? I'm not gonna venture any further than that. That is just the most typical cause of that. Of course, sometimes you can have like very dangerous things that could cause lots of vomiting, such as like a neurological problem. If you could, it's unlikely, but I mean there are, for instance, neurological issues that could be very dangerous, that could cause you to vomit. Um, so, like, yeah, but so maybe now you're not feeling better anymore if I'm having said that. I can't absolutely guarantee that that's not the case, but if you did have a neurological problem causing vomiting, you probably would be seeing you'd have other neurological issues, such as, for instance, things like dizziness already. You'd have a headache likely. Um, so that would be, some maybe if it was like an infectious, like like a meningitis, encephalitis, you'd have like a fever and chills. If it was, some sort of herniation or whatever, for some reason, you might also be having issues like motor issues with your face. Um, so basically, did you eat undercooked meat or handle meat, including like poultry or fish? Because that would be, I mean, that's a typical culprit of food poisoning. But anyway, I digress because this is not the purpose anyway of the stream. So basically, what I'm saying is, I don't want I don't want to have ties with a Muslim place. I don't want to be with a person who's okay with spending time in a Muslim place. So I'm just gonna, and plus it's like full of scammers and stuff and everything. They're pretty racist. Like people talk about racism in the United States, but like here it's considerably more racist. Do I live in Morocco? Well, for a month. I've been in Morocco for almost a month, and I'm sick of it. The idea being that I wanted Arab girlfriend to be sort of my partner in this venture here, and I went here, and what I'm realizing is that basically I don't want a girl that has stayed here. I would want an like Arab one still, be precisely because they're they're both have a problematic ideology and at the same time they're very arrogant. So it would be good to have a sort of representative from their side to like perhaps lead them towards a sort of better ideology. So I still want that, but I want somebody who's moved. And I'd already had that idea before, but before I'd sort of given up on finding someone like that. But in the end, I think I still will try to find someone like that, someone who's actually moved. So I'm going to New York because that kind of seems like, the place where you would go. It seems like the sort of, the sort of pinnacle of if you want to immigrate somewhere better, you would go there, even though it's super expensive. So you might not move there, but if you want to find somebody, I feel like that's the best place. But overall, I'm just going back to the quote West. So I'm going to go through Paris again because that's a big city. That's sort of a first logical step, especially if you're from Morocco. It's relatively easy. Not easy, but comparatively easy. Compared to the United States, it's a lot easier to get into to France. And so then, of course, Paris is the biggest city in France, and it's also the place that has the most immigrants. Um, so I'm gonna go to Paris just for a few days, staying at a family friend's place. How long am I staying in NIC? I don't know. Probably not for very long because it's really expensive. So basically, I'm just hoping to bump into the right person and then just go somewhere cheaper, but still in the United States. And even if I don't bump into the right person, I'm still probably going to go somewhere cheaper, still in the United States. Um, so that's that. Um, and so yeah, I'm just gonna be. I'm leaving tomorrow. Um, I just have to just finalize a few things because I'd actually rented an apartment and everything for a month, and I just have to get the people to come to recover the keys and give me back my down payment. Um, so that's that. That is my plan. So I'm going to be staying at a family friend's for a few days in Paris, and then going to go across to NYC, and then I'm not sure. Then I'm not sure. I'm so yeah. I basically again because of I've got this sort of Gorth thing, right, which is like the supernatural force that kind of basically is omniscient, so it knows everything and it sort of makes stuff happen. And for instance, it made like that girl that got killed. That was the Gorth that did it, and it did it, of course, largely for me somehow. Like it was a little surprise for me, and of course also for everyone else involved, right? But it largely also was for me. Yeah, so I don't really want to go into too much of the Gorth again, explaining it all. I've talked about it a lot. You can see it if you want to go on my link to my YouTube channel. I talk about the Gorth. So it's just, yeah, just, I don't want to go into it. But basically, I think that the Gorth also intends me to actually find the right person for me. So just think of like the sort of combination between God and the devil that was actually created by past humans. Okay, that in a nutshell is what the Gorth is. It's my theory to explain why, certain weird things happen. Um, so basically, I think the Gorth actually wants me to meet this a sort of ideal person for this purpose. And I've actually come up with a specific time and place where this probably is meant to happen, like a sort of a date, so to speak, a rendezvous. Is he talking to you, or why do you think he wants you to do that? Yeah, well, through sort of through not actually talking. I don't have any kind of thing like that. But just through like omens or synchronicities, like they're messages that happen, um, in part like through just like through the time. Like sometimes I'll see like certain like numbers, and if you read numbers upside down, it makes letters, And so I get messages like that through just suddenly looking at like the clock, and that like I get that all the time. But lots of it is just nonsense. But like it still sends messages, but that are sort of meaningless. But overall, but it's also just through thinking about it. I think basically I'm thinking New York, and then I'm thinking there's a specific place in New York, um, that just a specific park basically, at the crossing of basically on the Hudson River at 12th, what is it, 12th Avenue, 55th Street. Um, and so, and I'm thinking 8 o'clock on the 1st of May. Simply for 1st of May is kind of symbolic, right? It's sort of a classic day of sort of a that's been celebrated for like a day of spring. It's sort of like the middle of spring, if you will, and it's um it's also like uh, the Labor Day. It's often celebrated as a sort of international Labor Day, and it feels fitting since that's sort of a major theme of what I'm talking about. Um, and so, and why 8 o'clock? Well, because well, 1st of May is 1/3 through the year, right? It's exactly 1/3 of the way through the calendar year, and 8 o'clock is exactly 1/3 of the way through the official day. So, and also at 8 o'clock approximately, the sun will be behind us looking out, uh, at the Hudson River. So I just imagine that somebody else has had the same sort of intuition, and the person I'm looking for, maybe partly through guidance of the Gorth, is also going to be coming at that moment. So I'm going to specifically be sort of going for that rendezvous time, but I'm also just going to be walking around. I'm going to be walking around through Paris, going walking around through New York, and if anybody, I've got a specific idea in mind of the person I want, and if anybody who fits that sort of visual idea, I encounter anybody like that, then I'm going to go up to her and just going to talk to her and sort of try to explain what I'm looking for, and maybe, hopefully, actually, it will click, and you know, so yeah, that we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see. So yeah, it's in 1 week. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that is the plan. What do you mean with that? And we mentioned a purpose. Oh, well, just my plan of quote saving the universe. Well, not quote, of actually essentially saving the universe from the Gorth, since the Gorth essentially, I suspect that the Gorth was created by prior humanoids, though not human beings. Um, and that its purpose was actually essentially to basically to do the best, but it's a very, very abstract idea of what the best is. It's basically the idea of probably the idea of maximizing net pleasure throughout the universe. But to do so, it has to destroy the universe to make us live in a sort of supernatural fantasy realm that can actually exist for much longer than the universe. And so it has to destroy the universe for that to happen. And so instead, what it's also doing is making us suffer so that the actual material universe somehow, basically, our suffering will lead us to want to escape the real material universe and to enter this other fantasy realm, that it rules over. And so it's creating an enormous amount of suffering for an enormous amount of time until finally the whole material universe just kind of collapses. Um, so that is the plan of the Gorth. My plan is to stop it, but of course, the problem is that in reality it's impossible. It's mission impossible because the Gorth is already omniscient, and so it knows exactly what I'm going to do in advance. In fact, it knows my step. It has known my steps for decades at least, if not centuries or millennia or millions or billions of years beforehand. So can I defeat it using artificial general intelligence? No, because no, it is an artificial general intelligence that was created like it was created hundreds of billions of years ago, and it's just been growing and growing all that time to the extent that now it knows absolutely everything. It knows the exact position of every single elementary particle in the entire universe. Um, so I don't know Dr. Manhattan. Well, actually, I have to admit. Um, and so basically it's impossible to beat it, right? Because it knows everything. And it not only it knows everything right now, but because it knows everything right now, it can calculate everything that's going to happen in advance, and that's what we call a Laplace demon, which is a thought experiment, but actually we've actually created one. He's a character from a Marvel movie. Really? Maybe it's a new one that I haven't seen. I think I've seen them all until like the okay, or maybe like an older movie, but like of the recent trilogy, I sort of saw them, or like not trilogy, but the recent thing. I kind of saw them all. Um, oh, DC. I saw most of the DC ones too, but the DC I think I've missed a few. Though I've seen most of the sort of main recent ones, but I guess it must be like an older thing, or maybe really recent, or sort of side thing or whatever. Um, but yeah, yeah. Anyway, that is kind of the idea. So my plan is to stop at Watchmen. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. I haven't seen it. So I want to stop it, but to stop it, I can't stop it on my own. Basically, we'd have to collectively decide to stop it. We'd have to collectively progress to a stage of civilization where we're capable of stopping it. And so basically at this point, what I need to do is get myself known so that people understand that the threat that we're facing. And to get myself known, I first need uh, a female partner who is attractive enough to gain lots of views in the fashion that some of these, attractive young women have done so on Twitch. But obviously, I don't just want her to be a pretty face. So, like, I want her to be sort of my equal, my partner in this endeavor. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I know it would say it sounds completely crazy if you for to the average person, but or pretty much anyone. But whatever. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Um, if I mean, it would be kind of amazing if I actually did like meet her, especially if I met her like on that specific date. Um, so yeah, basically, I'm looking for like just pretty, and yeah, I guess Arab makes the most sense because they're the most like super Muslim and super like the most resistant to like actually thinking rationally and the most resistant to any sort of suggestion to do otherwise. And so I think it's important to have like a representative from there, and also because I think there are lots of them that are attractive, and I want someone that's like pretty big to seem like to sort of kind of exude an impression of strength, both because that's something that actually that I find attractive, and because I think it would be good for this purpose of sort of convincing people. I think people in general will tend to respect more people who are more sort of powerful seeming. So I'd like someone who's quite like big and would like both like vertically and horizontally. I don't mean obese or anything, but just sort of naturally sort of a strong build and a sort of rather low voice for a woman, but like still womanly, not like not where you wonder if she's maybe a man or something. But um yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And of course with the right personalities, it should have to be like smart and like and rational and well-meaning, benevolent, and and like determined and strong-willed, but without being obnoxious, and just sort of and who kind of agrees to do this, and so yeah, I'm, I'm hoping, I'm hoping. So for now, in any case, I haven't actually seen it. I didn't see anybody who like fit the visual image I had in mind, and of course, I mean, not even to mention the sort of whole mental aspect, but I haven't seen anyone here. The reason I went here is actually because I'd seen last time I was in Morocco a few years back. I saw one person. Just I spent like one night in Casablanca and just walking for a little bit. I saw one person that fit the image I had. So I came back here hoping to see either that person or someone similar, but I haven't seen anyone that looked like that. So um, this is my last night here. I'm going to go out a bit. I'll see. Maybe I'll see one, although it's unlikely. But even if I do, um, I I'm probably actually gonna like give it a pass because basically the kind of person I want would have left. How old am I? I'm 28. 28. turning 29 in July. So yeah. Um, is there anything else? Oh yeah, just a few addenda, maybe final, I don't know, addenda to my Constitution of Universal State, which is part of my whole project, of course, major part. Um, so three little addenda, three little amendments, I guess rather, would be first, the I added the ability to make a plebiscite. So basically, the representatives in the government can basically put policy to be voted on by the general population. Up until now, basically, to have a general votation among the population, it was only through the mechanism of initiative, whereby people like activists within the population had to collect signatures and a certain amount of signatures to have a policy put to vote. So now I'm adding this mechanism of plebiscite. Um, and so what I'm also a major reason for that is, and so that's the Second Amendment that I've just made, is that for military decisions of the universal state, I want there to be, for major military decisions there, I want there to be a votation among the whole population, or eligible population, and so that would typically require a plebiscite. And so, do I have a website? No, I've got a web domain. I bought realgood.me. I don't want to write me. I wanted realgood.com, but that was too expensive, so instead it's realgood.me. .me is actually Montenegro. Um, so yeah, but basically it's meant, yeah, it's just because it was cheap. Um, so yeah, yeah, exactly. But there's no website. There's no website for now because I don't know how to do it. I've looked into it. It seems really hard to make a good website. Um, and so basically, if I get success through Twitch, then I'll just hire somebody to make a website for me. That is the plan. I do have a YouTube channel, as I've said, which I've linked normally on my Twitch page, and it's called Real Good. Um, And normally I've already changed my name to Real Good. Am I still the Nathan L underscore Real Good, or am I just Real Good now? I'll have to check that. Um, do I have a subreddit? Yeah. So I created a few subreddits. Okay, so I still have the Nathan L. Okay, so I've got to change that. I've got to change that to Real Good. So basically, I've got to do that. Thank you. Um, And wait, oh yeah, the third amendment that I've recently done is that, so I've gone back and forth a few times, but basically what I'm realizing now having realized that the Gorth actually does kind of want the best from a very abstract perspective for everyone, in the sense of maximizing net enjoyment for everyone. So what one would call classical utilitarianism. Um, Basically, I have to recognize that by wanting to oppose the Gorth, I'm basically not necessarily really being fully rational. And as such, I have to recognize that I'm really basically following in a way, certain fetish. And so you could say it's a fetish for basically having things conform to my own taste. And one of those things is, well, that I actually live in reality and interact with real other beings instead of being in the kind of fantasy world. Um, and also, well, I want to basically prevent there to be lots of suffering up until we enter that fantasy world. And so, basically, I decided, one thing I realized as a person who has had lots of, well, who's quote incel, right, is that you know I I would have realized it anyway, that there's lots of struggle that comes from having separate sexes, and that it would just make things a lot easier for everyone to um, to just have a single sex, a single sort of have both sexual functions in the same organism, basically make everyone hermaphroditic. Um, and so, of course, for now we don't have the technology, but once we did so for a while, I'd being gay would be in many ways, except that then you suffer from homophobia, which it's still a major thing, right? But just to find a partner, yes. And in fact, I've had, various sort of propositions sort of from gay people in a way that I've never had from women. So yes, yes. Um, and so and so I was saying that um, basically it wouldn't make sense to have everybody be hermaphroditic, right? But at the same time, well, most of us have, pretty much all of us have our minds that are conditioned, biologically conditioned to kind of, find the idea of, we have a specific idea of what like males should look like and what females should look like in our species. And like we're attached to those ideas. And I think lots of people would resist the idea of having only hermaphrodite organism, which would mean abandoning our current um, ideas of, what humans are supposed to look like. And of course, I myself am very much attached to those ideas. Um, and so basically, I know that there would be lots of resistance to that. And so in the end, um, well, what I was thinking is that still wasn't rational. I still, from the rational perspective, and also in the name of creating less conflict, from all this, the sexism that both sexes experience, it made sense to have a hermaphroditic organism, but now I'm realizing that in any case, if I'm opposing the growth, fundamentally, I'm not being fully rational, and I'm instead following a fetish. And so what I was saying is that if you have the technology to make people hermaphroditic and you don't actually make them hermaphroditic, then basically you're just following your own sexual fetish, right? Then you're basically following your fetish of having two separate sexes instead of doing the rational thing, which is to just combine them into one. But since basically by opposing the growth, I'm already following a fetish, it makes sense to just at that point it's not incongruent to congruent, is that a word, but it's not incoherent to also follow your fetish more specifically by allowing to have separate sexes. And in any case, you could get rid of the whole issue of sexism if you just biologically engineered people to, even if you keep distinct sexes, you could biologically engineer people to not have, differing goals as you do now. Like right now, a major problem is that like men, or like one major problem is just that there's lots of ugly people and lots of people suffer from that. So that would have to get rid of. But even then, there's the issue that men want to have sex a lot more than women, and so that creates an imbalance and it creates lots of frustration. Um, and so if you could correct that, so that there's equal desire on each side, then that would, become a lot less problematic. Um, so so basically you could correct all the issues that stem from having separate sexes. For instance, inceldom, as I suffer from, and also just sexism that comes from, on average, different sexes having different unhealthy behaviors. You could just get rid of those tendencies without getting rid of separate sexes, and so you'd get rid of those problems. And so, because of that, I've considered it acceptable to allow the continued existence of separate sexes. And because of that, and because I think allowing for that will mean that there'll be less resistance to my whole policies and to the whole, uh, project of the universal state, I've decided to allow, once again, to keep separate sexes indefinitely, and basically just by not mentioning in the Constitution that humans had to be turned into hermaphrodites. So that's the third amendment to the Constitution, and at this point it feels pretty final because otherwise I haven't touched it for over a month, apart from those three little amendments. And so, crusty old eggplant, what's that? You think it's your first time here? Well, normally I get a message when it is your first time here, and I haven't gotten that message. But it's true that I've never seen crusty old eggplant before. So, welcome, I guess. Yes, welcome. Um, and and yeah, and another thing, of course, is that, I mean, I myself, right? I mean, it would fit. Oh, you saw me like a year ago? That's possible. That's possible, yeah. Well, I first started about in June last year. And so another thing is that I have this image of precisely, I mean, this idea of having a woman with me and to sort of, basically together we would have sort of a brand. And of course, in a way, it would not really make sense to, have a big sort of brand being the two of us as male and female, and yet at the same time be advocating to get rid of male and female. like in a way, I don't know. You see what I mean? Like part of our thing would be to sort of to show how um, we could have a sort of a nice relationship together as males and females, and so as a male and a female. So from that perspective, um, it would. Sorry, I have to take this, so I'm just gonna stop it there. Thanks for watching anyway. Bye.